listen, this is bad. The situation is bad. This headline makes it sound very innocuous. When you read the article, you see that it's actually everybody who shared or liked anti-national posts on social media. That's it. If you liked or shared a post that the Department of State deems to be anti-national, in this case, we all know we're talking about being anti-genocide, right? Then they're not just inviting you to self-deport. They actually sent out emails notifying hundreds of students that their visas are hereby revoked. Their status is now gone in the United States, and they are here illegally and they need to leave. Meanwhile, Pomona College, which is supposed to be a really good university, has said that it's going to turn over student disciplinary records to Congress for all the students who were disciplined for their involvement in divestment protests. I mean, I can't... This is just unprecedented and insane. It's insane. I knew we were cooked in 2013 when I started teaching. I'm a university professor, political science. When I was teaching American politics, and my students, this was 10 years after the invasion of Iraq. 10 years. At that point, it was still controversial to call it an invasion, an occupation. And my students had been habituated in the post 9/11 world to a complete obliteration of their civil liberties in the name of national security. And people my age and older, we were worried at the time because what we were seeing is that people didn't seem to care. And then as the years went on, the complete erasure, elimination of our constitutionally protected civil liberties became worse and worse and worse and worse and more blatant across administrations. Barack Obama is not less culpable for this than George W. Bush, and certainly paved the way for what we are seeing right now. I can give you details if you want, but this is like, so you can see the through line from post 9/11, George W. Bush enacts the Patriot Act. Patriot Act makes it basically so that the U.S. government can see anything that you're doing. Privacy for privacy's sake, which has been a bedrock of American democracy for so many years, for hundreds of years, literally. Now it has been eroded, right? And people were freaking out. Librarians, the badasses of the world, were on the front lines saying to the U.S. government, no, you cannot come and see our records of what every library patron has checked out in their life. Back then we knew. We saw that it was getting bad, right? My dad back then was like, this country is going in the direction of fascism. And everybody around him everybody was like, you're overthinking it. You're overreacting. Maybe in, 100 years, it'll be like that. But we have institutions in place. We have things in place to protect us. And he was like, no, you don't understand. I see where this is going. He was so right. Anyway, George W. Bush, Patriot Act, people started to become, again, in 2013, when I was teaching, people were like, well, it's okay because if the government comes and looks at our phone records because national security, but if they go too far, then we'll have something to complain about. The years go on, and now I'm seeing a few years later, in say 2019, I'm teaching the case of Shamima Begum, who in the UK, she was a child trafficking victim. She was basically recruited from the UK online. She became the wife of an ISIS member and flew to Syria and had 2 children with him. And then she tried to leave and come back. She was a UK citizen, and the UK stripped her of her citizenship. And we were talking about that in the class. And again, I knew we were cooked because people had no problem whatsoever with stripping the citizenship of a UK citizen. But she was a child trafficking victim. She was like 15 when this happened. So they stripped her of her citizenship. One of her children died in a tent waiting for her case to be adjudicated. And she was still stripped of the citizenship. And because people didn't care. People didn't care. They were like, well, she signed up for that organization to be involved in it by being the wife of this guy. She was 15. She was a child. People didn't care. A couple more years go by. I'm teaching international politics, and we're talking about surveillance, right? And people basically told me outright, my students, college students, they said outright, if you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't have a problem with the government having access to everything in your life. Every post you've ever posted, every text you've ever sent, they didn't care. They didn't care. And this is so disturbing for me as someone who watched this degradation of democracy, degradation of our norms over and over again and over a period of time. And, you know, when Barack Obama, our illustrious constitutional law scholar, makes me sick, when he signed into law the National Defense Authorization Act, he made it so that anybody, anywhere in the world, U.S. citizen or otherwise, including me, natural-born United States citizen, born and raised in the United States, anywhere in the world, I could be extrajudicially assassinated, drone striked, denied due process. What's due process? What's habeas corpus, right? All of us were sounding the alarm over Guantanamo Bay. Nobody cared among the younger generation. Nobody cared. And the older ones, some of them cared, but that was completely ideologically skewed, right? So the obliteration of due process meant that anyone, anywhere in the world, could be assassinated outside of the bounds of due process. Extrajudicial assassination by drone strike with no oversight at all. Just the president signs off on it, and there's no due process. There's no recourse. You could be innocent. Nobody cares. And now we have people here in the United States legally who have not broken any laws, who have not done anything that would fall within support of an organization that the United States doesn't like. When we're talking about materials, so this is another thing people are missing in this. Support for a terrorist organization does not mean liking or reposting or participating in a protest or calling into a bullhorn. That's not what people mean by support. What's wrong with you guys? That's called thought police. When they're talking about support for an organization, legally, that has a definition. Material support means that you are providing money or logistical support, not that you just think something the government doesn't like. All these people in the internet world who are defending the disappearance of students here legally who have done nothing, absolutely nothing, that would warrant having their status revoked or being detained and disappeared by ICE. This guy, we don't have any idea what he's even accused of. These other people, she co-wrote an op-ed for her student newspaper, and she's been disappeared and her visa has been revoked. This man was a leader in Colombia of the student encampment around Gaza protests, and he negotiated with the university around that. These people have some kind of a public online record, right? That we can say absolutely is not okay what's happened to them, but we can at least try to figure out what the government's trying to do to them. This guy is just an Iranian national. There's no online record saying what he's even for us to guess what he's being accused of. Why has he been disappeared to Louisiana? I promise you, no one is safe. I promise you, this is what everybody is afraid of. If you haven't been freaking out up until now, which I haven't, now is the time, okay? Now is the time. They start with people who are on visas and green cards. Then they go to naturalized citizens. Then they go to US-born citizens. All of us are vulnerable. And if you didn't know that until now you know, stand up and fight back before it's too late.